All right, guys. You voted for this video about why George from the Impulsive podcast was fired or let go or whatever silly goosery. So we're gonna watch that. It's a video from Cabos, so it'll be fun. Let's get this party started.
Standing on 2 feet where I could be on a podcast and not feel guilty.
People watch, and without people watching, I just have a show like
H3.
Treated you like
What do you
myself
say?
on Impulsive.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
live today more than I'd like to admit, who have the same collective intelligence as cavemen.
You don't give a shit about this show anymore, let's be honest. It's like bands that hate each other that have to get on stage every night and play for the audience. You don't even like each other, dude.
That's not true. I like Mike. George,
They're literally
Damn, it sounds like there's a lot of resentment being built up here. That seems to be what it is.
like they don't exist.
well, I could argue that.
They don't.
Was
they're,
he-
they're there, but like
They're
they're
there.
actually a negative input to the world.
They're-
They're literally like they don't exist.
What is he talking
well,
about?
I could argue that.
They don't.
Was
they're,
he-
They're there, but like
They're
they're
there.
actually a negative input to the world.
They're net negative.
Was-
Logan fired me, and we're no longer friends anymore. It kind of sucks.
What the fuck? How do I solve this riddle? I wasn't going to talk, but I am now.
Who remembers Mac from Impulsive? Logan Paul's former co-host from the early days who
Voices
got
feel
kicked
so
off
low.
Impulsive because he just wasn't fitting the bill.
Mac,
So, bro,
I see what's
story.
happening today. And I'm
Yes.
just gonna say something really quick. You're not cut off because you aren't able to speak or the people are loud. You generally miss the cultural point of talking about stuff that people want to hear about. I'm sorry.
So since Mac left Impulsive, the newest co-host, the third man in the chair, was George Janko. George Janko now built a name for himself. Everyone kind of knows him from Impulsive. Or George has left or been fired from Impulsive. And today, we are going to look at the reasons why.
Logan fired me, and we're no longer friends anymore.
Because let's not fucking kid ourselves. There have been cracks and signs, and today we're really going to dive into it. I'm just going to put it out there, in my opinion, anyone distancing themselves from Logan Paul can only be a good thing. The guy's a complete and utter fraud. I think to start this video, we have to look at the cracks and when they started to show on Impulsive. Because leading up to George openly slagging off...
I don't know, man. George seems to be very insensitive. Insensitive. George seems to be very sensitive. He doesn't really seem, and I think that that's part of it, you know. And maybe he just doesn't know how to push back correctly. Like, here's my thing: when you're going on some kind of podcast like that, or you're like a host or whatever, he obviously was the host. You kind of have to have thicker skin. And for me, usually when somebody will like criticize me, or like make like kind of a joke at me in the real world, even if it kind of offends me, the best response is to kind of fuck with them back a little bit and take shots at them and kind of like having a little bit of a joking back and forth. And it seems like he got really upset in general just from like whatever, any exchange. He seems to be too sensitive to take like a bit of a joke on there. And yeah, you know, but the first guy seemed to not understand, or the second guy, I don't know, whatever. But the other guy they showed seemed to just not really understand what they were talking about from a cultural perspective. Maybe they were trying to talk about some loaded topics and he just wasn't getting it. And maybe that's why that other guy was a bad fit. So, but
Logan Paul, you could start to see he was not comfortable in that chair. One of the major moments, in my opinion, was when Bobby Lee went on Impulsive. In one part
yeah,
of
listen, people are still upset. People have been crying about this, but after he made those jokes about how he, violently assaulted a child and about how when she was like, didn't like it, he just kept going, right? He bought like a prostitute he said was 13 years old. It looks like Natalie Portman from The Professional, which is a good movie. And then he, when she was crying, he fucked her. From that point on, like, that doesn't sound like a fake story, and I don't like Bobby Lee anymore. I think that's disgusting. That's like way over the line. Even if you want to say it's just a joke, it seemed like somebody who was being very serious about it. The way that he charged it up, I mean, you can go watch it. Maybe I'll link him in this video. Him say that. I think it's disgusting. I don't like Bobby Lee. I think he's a scumbag for that. I don't care. I really just don't think that was a joke, and I'll never change my perspective on that. Seeing like the way that he talked about it just came off as way too much, so
interview, George decides to open up and talk about things that are personal to him.
2 years of my life recently was the hardest years of my life. I gained 40 pounds of weight.
Damn, same.
I was really honestly,
Except
if I
for
was
400.
not Christian, I'd probably be suicide.
And Bobby Lee, being the comedian he is, the guy who riffs on his own trauma all the time, decided to, you know, poke a bit of fun at George.
It was just a long monologue.
He was just waiting.
Let me just say something. I love what you were saying. It was just very long.
That's usually me. That's usually.
But you know, I got what you're saying, and you really inspired me, George. Can I say something?
Comedians suck.
No.
I hate comedians.
No, I want to say something.
Sebastian sucked, left me on red. You suck. First of all, don't touch me. Do not touch me.
I mean, listen, because I hate Bobby Lee, but fundamentally, you can't really get vulnerable around a comedian. You're obviously setting yourself up for a problem to do that. You know, laugh it off is all you really should have done.
Thank you.
All right, but yeah, we just need writers to edit that down.
George made a horrendous comeback. I mean, George, yeah, just don't ever go up against Bobby Lee.
Like, if we had a staff of writers, they'd be like, yeah, we'll cut that. But
I'm sorry.
essentially, it was a really good monologue.
Usually when I do my comedy, I don't have writers in the room. I actually write my own stuff.
Okay, I can tell.
Okay. Incredible.
Maybe you should get a writer. But my point is,
And after that moment, you know, George just shut down for the entire podcast, barely said a word. Clearly a bit of embarrassment, but also probably because he was opening up and got completely shut down. And it all bubbled under the surface until Logan Paul said this, leaving George to storm off the podcast.
there are certain.
He is clocked out.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
George has been under a tremendous amount of abuse. No, stop, George. I want you over.
That's weird though. Like, I don't know why you would call attention to it. Like, obviously he tuned out, but you know, probably didn't need to call attention to it. But whatever.
Here with me, George. I want you over here. Chase him down. Go. You find him, George. No, go get him. Go get him. I said this. He walked, and that's a first. And now we're gonna have to deal with the fallout of this episode for the
Logan,
next 2 months. I swear to God, Bobby Lee, you've pissed off my co-host. He's probably crying in the driveway.
Now, I mean, George Janko claims he's a comedian. Seeing a comedian get upset from another comedian, you know, it's hard to watch. It's a bit like, well, surely you should be able to take it. But you don't know what's going on behind the scenes with that podcast dynamic. And clearly, George probably wasn't as offended by the jokes. Probably seemed like he wasn't taken seriously when opening up, which seems to be a common theme with George amongst the podcast anyway. George did apologize to Bobby Lee on Tiger Belly when Logan Paul went on via a FaceTime.
I want to apologize for my behavior on your podcast. I feel like I was a little.
Bobby Lee, you shut your mouth. I'm apologizing to you. I left you. You were our guest, and I left you, Bobby.
This is good.
I will forever regret that.
It's kind of even. It sounded a little more. You were our guest, and I left you for that. Okay, that seems a little silly. I don't know. Like, if you were genuinely upset, why apologize for those feelings? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there's. Okay, whatever.
For the rest of my fucking life, there's not a day I will lay my head on that pillow and not know that I disappointed a prince that does stand up like you. Do you have any idea how ashamed of myself
I didn't mean to close the game. Fuck. Why go that far? Just be like, yeah, I got a little, you know, you could apologize and say, I wish I didn't react as disproportionately as I did. I wish I was a little cooler about it. Sorry about that, Bobby. I should have been more respectful or whatever you want to say. But I'm never going to be able to sleep without thinking about how I got up. She's like, chill out.
I am?
Wow.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Of you?
Well, I'm gonna.
So sorry.
Thank you.
Please don't
Thank you
even
for saying that.
apologize to me.
But I want to pull back my apology then. Because I too. Because I literally did not feel sorry.
Pull out.
I pulled out of the apology. I don't feel sorry, but I will accept yours, right? And hopefully, you know, when I come back to your podcast, we can make it right.
Absolutely.
No, but can I ask you a question though? Why did
Homie's fucking glazing. He's glazing Bobby Lee right now, dude. Jesus.
you do that?
Because Logan was gaslighting me. He's an asshole.
Exactly.
And that was the end of that, but definitely a huge moment before George Janko subsequently left. And of course, you know, the biggest crack of them all, this is when I think things have really gone bad, and I think this is a pivotal moment. After this, it was never the same between George and Logan, was when Logan Paul actively went after George for being religious.
One that really hurt me is you told me I need a therapist because I believe in Jesus. That
No,
one hurt me.
No, I didn't. I said you need a therapist because Jesus isn't quite doing it for you,
No, you
which
didn't.
is
No, you
which is
didn't.
true.
No, you didn't.
I
And
said,
I don't want to stand down. No, you didn't.
it is common knowledge that you don't interpret reality like reality happens.
When you think George needs a therapist, what category am I falling under?
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional. Me.
Yes.
I'm not emotionally intelligent. Could you pick a time and frame any day of our
Sure.
life?
Here's one. 3 weeks ago, when you were sitting in that chair, you stormed off this exact podcast because you were upset about something a comedian said.
No, I was upset that I finally discussed.
Listen, I just answered your question. I'm not looking for rationalization about the thing. I just answered your question.
I'm going to jump into
Who's
that one.
that?
I'm not sure that that's representative of emotional intelligence.
What I've examined and witnessed in your behavior, I don't think the prayer is doing enough.
Absolute prick. Imagine Logan Paul.
It doesn't really sound like he's criticizing religion there. It just sounds like what he's saying is that you need more than religion because you clearly are a fucking emotional mess. I don't know if I would have called it emotional intelligence, but like the general sentiment I can agree with. He did go way too far there. So yeah, what makes him a prick for that? I mean, the biggest issue that you would have is like you shouldn't be blasting somebody on live for that if you're friends. There are some things that you guys should stay away from. But from what we saw there, and I could be wrong, it sounded like the guy, George himself, was the one who came up with that issue, right? So, like, he's the one that proposed, like, I had a problem with this, and he wanted to talk about it on live.
Saying you aren't emotionally intelligent. Make it make sense. All because Logan Paul's so stubborn that he doesn't have a faith. Nothing wrong with that, but when you're pushing not having a faith on someone who does have a faith...
That's not at all what was communicated there, but okay.
It's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, especially one of your best friends. I mean...
Yes. Yeah, I think people overreacted and, like, kind of virtue signaled about religion there. Like, no, he was criticizing religion. You can't do that. What a scumbag. He wasn't really, from what I remember. It's not that deep, but okay, whatever.
George made some pretty strong statements.
I'll be honest with you, bro.
How dare
Christ
you?
Fucks.
Oh, God. You bashing me in front of a group of people for my beliefs is not right. Genuinely, like...
Jesus Christ fucks? Like he has sex? Or he sucks? What does that mean? What does it mean to say somebody's fucks like that?
I know people that hate me, that treat me better about my faith than you, and you're my best friend.
Definitely questioning why we have to perpetuate a belief that is fucking...
I say...
So you can see there, George...
Okay, I mean, listen, I love God, but there are some bad things about religion, especially in today's loaded atmosphere. I guess you could argue, I mean, we didn't see very much of that to really make too much of a distinction, but okay.
Really came into his own at the start, but now, from them clips, you can see the cracks starting to happen. I also think the CryptoZoo stuff, I got to give a huge shout out to George here. I think George Janko was the only one who called out Logan or gave the other people, the people who got scams, POV to Logan's face when Logan was almighty righteous, I'm going to sue CoffeeZilla, I'm not wrong. George Janko gave some actual good point of view and good questions.
So what do you say to the people that watched you make the project where you're taking pictures and all the other projects? Yeah. How does it feel for you in your seat where your team saying, hey, shut up, don't bring this up, we're going to bring this back in the future and all the answers will be explained? How does it feel knowing that you couldn't speak up in time and now you look like this villain, and no disrespect, you look like a piece of shit to the people that are like, yo, fuck this guy sitting on millions of dollars, always trying to get attention, and now he doesn't give a fuck about us, so he's not going to speak out about it until this other fucking dude's going to speak out, and now this cocksucker is going to talk now.
Yeah.
I thought that was great, having someone like that on the podcast, someone who will actually do that. But do I think an egomaniac and narcissist like Logan Paul enjoyed what George did there? Absolutely fucking not. I'm not sitting here claiming this is the reason George left at all, but on his own platform where he's brutally trying to defend himself and his decision to sue CoffeeZilla, George giving some questions and actually point of views from people who have been scammed, I bet Logan hated that shit. Well, George took a break from Impulsive for a bit. He didn't appear in one of the episodes and launched his own podcast. In a video titled Why George Janko is Not on Impulsive, he goes on to talk about why he made his own podcast, but this was 4 months ago, but he has not left Impulsive and he still has a great relationship with Logan and Mike. What is interesting in this video is that he goes on to detail, where he felt probably uncomfortable on Impulsive and why he...
Well, he probably just made his own podcast because he wanted to, like, display his perspective a little bit more than in general. I mean, that would make sense to me, so...
To make his own podcast.
I decided to do this less than 20 hours ago, and the reason was this.
What?
We had a lot of content lined up for 2023.
Oh, wait, that seems very impulsive of you to do. It makes sense for him to want to make his own podcast, but if correct me if I'm wrong, from what I just heard, it sounded like he said that he just made the decision to make the podcast now. That seems a little bit. That seems a bit too impulsive. Like all jokes aside, you should let that sit for a little bit. Like what? That seems, but okay, it seems a little rushed.
But then right before we shot it, I hated it, and I realized I'm like, dude, this isn't me, bro. Like I wanna focus on things that I care about.
Okay.
And I got in a habit of. I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out of who I am. And I feel like I'm not the only one who goes through this. I feel like in any career path you take, you are doing it to get your foot in the door. And then at what point do you stand up and start being who you are? And honestly, it helped push me in the direction to do my own thing while obviously being on the #1 podcast in the world. This is never going to get to Impulsive levels. I'm doing this just to share more of my point of view without corrupting the flow of Impulsive. You know, there's some thoughts that I want to share with, if it's from my beliefs or just my point of view,
God told him
that
to, yeah,
necessarily might be monologue-ish or might be something that a certain core audience of Impulsive might want to hear. This is the extended George Janko version. And standing on 2 feet where I could be on a podcast and not feel guilty about, like, you know, my monologues or like my point of views in any way. And I feel like it was just redundant, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that.
And at the start of the video, you know, he jokes around saying this.
Logan fired me. And we're no longer friends anymore. It kind of sucks.
Well, 4 months later, it seems that joke has really come true as things have heated up between Logan Paul and George Janko, where it seems they are legitimately not friends. And
well, I mean, if that was, if he said Logan fired me and that was like his idea of a joke, I doubt it was a joke, because I don't think that George is funny or has the capacity to make jokes. To me, it sounds more like there was a discussion that maybe was that long ago where they talked about a potential moving on in some capacity, whether it was Logan firing him or asking him if he still wanted to be on the show, which makes sense to have that conversation, especially since his perspective seems to be, I wanted my own show where I felt like I could talk about my own stuff. But the framing of it seemed a little bit like, I don't really feel like I'm able to be myself on this podcast. And that might have just kind of turned into a whole separate conversation. So
really dislike each other. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about. So George Janko's podcast, you know, has been getting steady views. Obviously nothing compared to Impulsive because it's a massive podcast, very well established. Well, recent clips have been going viral from Impulsive where Logan Paul takes multiple shots at George Janko.
We don't acknowledge him enough. We love you guys. We love you guys. Seriously, without you, this would be nothing. I didn't know we were doing this right now.
I'm sorry.
I get it. I love this outlet. I love this outlet, and it exists because people watch. And without people watching, I just have a show like.
No, without people watching.
What did he say? He just has a show like George? You know, I feel bad because I don't really particularly care for this George guy. There's something that irks me about him, and I wonder what it is. He reminds me, listen, I think we've all had that friend in our friend group that, like, we give a little bit of shit to. You know, he's kind of the punching bag of the group, and we love the guy. And they usually, you know, sometimes they get upset and they take it well. You know, he's you guys remember the podcast? Oh God, I wish we could bring that back. I truly do. But it's like that, you know what I mean? And I just, that's what it is. But then there's something so unlikable about George. You know, he takes it so personally. I don't know. That's me.
I just have a show like George. He probably said.
Damn,
Mike's reaction.
got him.
With him. You know, we're not laughing along, being like, yeah, but kind of just being like,
I got him.
Why have you said this? You know, Logan Paul clearly upset at George. There's another clip that happened in the same podcast where people are speculating that Logan talked about George as well.
Alive today, more than I'd like to admit, who have the same collective intelligence as cavemen.
No, like
worse. The same. The only difference is there's technology and stuff.
No, that makes it worse. That's why I said worse, because they don't even realize how addicted they are to their phones. They're literally they don't exist.
Well, I could argue that.
They don't.
Was he?
They're there, but like they're actually a negative input to the world.
They're net negative.
Was he going? Is he thinking about the same person I'm thinking about?
I don't know if
I'm
he's
thinking about like billions of people.
Who are you talking about, Abby? Say the name, we'll believe it. For our.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Are they talking? Was George addicted to his phone? I mean, or they bleep it out. But I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. In the way where he takes criticism so poorly, he's always on his phone looking to see what people have said about him. You know. But okay, maybe.
No, don't even.
This one's a bit.
George is the kind of guy that says, "I'm not playing anymore" when he loses a game. Yeah, true. He sounds like the kind of guy that flips over the Monopoly board. You know.
But the lady, I don't even know her name, the guest, it seemed like she said George. And Logan Paul, the way he was riffing about like someone not really existing and this and that, it did seem like he was taking shots at George. So
he might have been.
Logan, I don't think
I wouldn't doubt
Mike
it.
still likes George a lot and has kept things respectful, even
Probably.
during the religion debate.
I'm going to jump into that one. I'm not sure that that's representative of emotional intelligence.
Well, after all these clips aired, George took to Twitter and said, "To the Impulsive fans, I'm so sorry I can't speak about things. Not my choice. I do love you guys, and for those of you sending me the clip of him talking shit, it's all love. I've already moved on from that toxic environment."
Interesting. So hearing that I'm sorry I can't speak about things. There's one of two reasons why he wouldn't be able to speak about things. One, maybe he's suing, which is doubtful because I doubt he has anything that he could actually sue for. Or two, is that there's some kind of a non-disclosure agreement signed, and that would be a little bit weird that I mean, I guess it would make sense, but like that comes off as a little suspicious to me. That comes off as a little suspicious to me if they had like an NDA where they just simply weren't allowed to talk about things. I don't know. It's like weird. Like, why would you, or some things, like, why wouldn't you be able to talk about, like, talk back? I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a little silly, but that would be bizarre if there was like an NDA that prevented him from responding in some capacity. Or maybe he's just being a baby and says he can't respond. I don't know.
I wouldn't say Mike was talking shit from what I saw in his
Apparently
clips,
it's
but
Nick's
yeah,
sister.
Logan for sure. George also made a tweet way before in April saying, I wasn't going to talk, but now I am. But, you know, since hasn't talked, he said it's not his choice that he can't talk. He can either sign something saying he can't. Maybe Logan's threatened him with legal action. You know, we know he likes to do that a lot.
I suggest you use the money you got from pumping your Patreon to hire a good lawyer. You're gonna need it.
George himself has actually taken shots at Logan too. On his podcast, you know, he took this tiny little shot saying, you know, referencing how he felt on the podcast, a bit invisible at times.
We talk, we hang out, but it's never been like a one-on-one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not one-on-one.
Yeah, that's cool. I know what you mean.
I
We're
just
like
treated
one.
you like myself on Impulsive.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
George also liked comments about Logan. Someone commented, Mike came out on Jeff FM and called Logan Paul. Logan was immediately rude and clicked on Mike. Didn't even respect Jeff or say hi to him. Showed he doesn't care about Jeff at all. A real friend would be good to a friend, even if they are stressed about being stuck at an airport. Mike knows Logan's not the best friend, but he stays for clout and opportunities. Props not letting that crap cloud your faith. Takes someone strong to walk away from such opportunities, even if they are bad for you, which George, in fact, liked. Someone also commented, George, just a heads up, I'm pretty sure Impulsive Channel will shadow ban your name. I left a comment of your name in it, and it won't show up. Then I looked through the comments, and there's not one comment of your name. I think Logan has made it so comments of your names won't show. He's so mature. Sorry he turned on you like this. You know, we can definitely see a massive rift between...
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I personally don't really give a shit about that. I mean, it makes sense, though. Like, he might have pulled him out of there, which shows, like, some kind of, like, horrible animosity towards each other. But for me personally, that there's a lot of people that are like purists on YouTube where they're like, if you don't let somebody comment something or you delete a comment, then who fucking cares? You know what I mean? I find it so weird. You know, go make your own content and then complain about it on your platform if you want. But like to put it under someone else's video is just like I think there's nothing wrong with deciding to censor shit under your video. It doesn't really matter, you know? As long as you're not abusing the copyright system to try to take people's ability away from talking about it in general. Yeah, just like don't have it under my video. I think it's who gives a fuck about that.
Between Logan Paul and George. Generally speaking, I think George, in my opinion, was probably the most level-headed guy on Impulsive. Someone who actually, you know, like I said, you always have
I guess I've only seen him have crybaby meltdown, so I guess I can't really tell. But
giving a point of view of CryptoZoo victims to Logan's face at the height of the controversy. He seemed like a good guy. Logan Paul, we all know by now. Everyone knows this. Watch my last video. He's an absolute scumbag. He's a massive narcissist. I don't doubt that he can be a horrible friend. I think anyone who distances themselves from Logan Paul can only be a good thing. Am I biased because I don't like Logan Paul, the way he conducts himself online, the scam and the lies that he's told? Yes. I think eventually more will come out. It always does. But one thing is for sure, Logan Paul is a prick.
Okay. That was fine. Cool video, I guess.